Hi everyone, welcome to George's Library. This is George, and today we're going to talk about Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis.
My dear Lucy, I wrote this story for you, but when I began it I had not realized that girls grow quicker than books. As a result, you are already too old for fairy tales, and by the time it is printed and bound you will be older still. But someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again.
So, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the first book written in the Narnia series, and the second book in the canon. The Magician's Nephew is the first book of the series. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the second book of the series that continues the chronological history of Narnia. So C.S. Lewis wanted the Magician's Nephew to be the first book in the series. He wrote that as a prequel a few years after the publication of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The writing style is very similar to The Magician's Nephew. From chapter 1, you get to know the characters, you get to know the plot, and things just start rolling the dice. So it came to me that if The Magician's Nephew was sort of a reproduction of the Old Testament, where you have the genesis of the world, then The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is more a reproduction of the New Testament. And Aslan, instead of being the god that was in the first book, now he's more of a reincarnation of Jesus, or a reinterpretation of Jesus in our world. He's more human, and if you know this, then the entire act of Aslan's sacrifice in this book is really a retelling of the sacrifice of Christ in the New Testament. In biblical terms, Jesus is the human form of God, right? So in this case, the reason why C.S. Lewis decided to make Aslan more vulnerable and more human is just to present us that. Here, we don't have the deity of the first book. Here we have this vulnerable human figure that is ready to sacrifice himself for Edmund. Edmund being humanity in its most, again, vulnerable state. Obviously, the witch is still Lucifer, Lucifer being the one tempting humans, playing around with their feelings, using these in his advantage. And this is exactly what the White Witch does with Edmund. She gives him Turkish delights because this is what Edmund wants. And then he uses that in her advantage to bring him and the rest of the humans in her castle so she can use them all. This is temptation at its finest form. Now that you know the story, I want to talk about the questions that were unanswered. Like, what happened to the humans in those last 100 years? Because we know that at the end of The Magician's Nephew, we do have the first king and queen of Narnia as human. There were humans in Narnia in the beginning. So what happened? What happened to them afterwards? Where did they go? Why were there no humans in Narnia when the Pevensey brothers got in there through the wardrobe? What happened to them? Did they disappear? Were they frozen by the witch? None of this is being explained. We know there are no humans in the witch's castle. The castle was filled with animal statues. We had giants, we had unicorns, we had all sorts of creatures that were frozen in there, but still no humans. So that's a question that was not answered. We don't really know what happened. So it's either we will find out about this in the later books, or this is a continuity error. And another thing that I didn't like that much was the fact that animals had human features. And by human features, I mean the beavers would eat using forks and knives. At some point, even Aslan was walking on his 2 feet. It just didn't feel right to me. It felt like a little bit too much because this aspect was not presented in the first book. It's either this was an evolution form of the animals, like in 100 years they have developed these skills and these mannerisms because, again, of the humans that were at the beginning in Narnia, because these are human traits and very British traits, if I might add. So obviously these animals have been influenced by the humans around them. Again, where are the humans if they are so important in the story and they've influenced so much in this world? All in all, the second book of the Chronicles of Narnia is great. We have new characters, We have a world that has grown since the first book. We don't explore much of it. We just see the conclusion to the things that started in the first book. I'm very excited to see what comes next. If you have any questions about what I've been reading so far, or if you have anything to add about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or the rest of Narnia that I did not mention here or didn't notice, then please let me know about it in the comments. I'm very happy to hear and talk about the books I read. I'm also so excited about the fantasy genre that I would really like to carry on exploring other such novels and see what new feelings or new styles I can learn out. I only know Narnia and Lord of the Rings so far. I've read The Lord of the Rings before, but I am thinking of reading it again. Maybe not soon, but at some point in the future. If not that, I'm really looking forward on tackling with The Witcher and other popular fantasy novels that were written in the last decade or so. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for listening, you guys. I will see you next time, and I wish you all the best, and keep on reading.